It is surprisingly more challenging than you'd think it is. I'm going to get better at hitting that bell by the end of the year, I promise. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. It's so great to see all of you here. It's so great to see you guys sitting up close, even those of you that I made pick up their food and move closer. Thank you for doing that. We're going to start today's meeting with a moment of silence in honor of longtime Rotarian Edwin Duravage. Ed passed away on July 25th. He was 99 years old and was a Rotarian for 36 years. So please bow your heads in a moment of silence, remembering Ed Duravage. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask new member Tiffany Lewis to come to the podium to deliver a reflection and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
There was an attorney that asked a great question. The question was, who is my neighbor? And as he talked to the master and they had this wonderful conversation, he said, I'll tell you in a story. He said there was a man that's been going on a particular road and he was actually beat up, stripped of his raiment. The priest that actually walked by this particular person walked by and went on the other side. Another person actually come and actually looked at the person and said, and went on the other side. But then there was a great Samaritan that happened to see, had pity. And from that point, he said, you know what, I'll bound up your wounds. I'll take you somewhere to be healed. And guess what? He told the person that was taking care of that person, do me a favor, whatever you spend on this person, I'll reimburse you. The point of the story is this, is that oftentimes we may miss the very person that they need the most help. So let's go and pray. Dear Heavenly Father and Gracious One, we thank you, Father God, for the Rotarians that are here, Father. We thank you, God, for the opportunity to be able to have pity, to understand when someone is in need. You've equipped us with gifts and talents and courage, all these things to help other individuals, Father God. And let us not be so busy in our due diligence and not forget about each other. We are Rotarians. We're not here because we had to be. We're here because we wanted to be. And for that, we give you glory, honor, and praise. And we all say, Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tiffany. As we begin our meeting, I'd like to thank and acknowledge Browning Kuzno as this month's meeting sponsor and Rotarian Brent Kuzno. Brent texted me this morning saying, as luck would have it, he was not able to join us today. So just let him know that his logo was up there really big and you guys all saw it and appreciate it. If everybody could just text Brent right now and say, they're talking about you, where are you? That'd be great. Does anyone have any guests that they would like to introduce? I invite you to come to the floor mic.
President Kev, glad to introduce Caitlin Pluniak, who is very active in healthcare and has done some really interesting projects including some support for the Ukraine. So please welcome Caitlin.
Caitlin, thank you for being here.
I'm Jason Kutchman with the library. I brought with me Irene Blue, our Director of HR and Organizational Development.
Thank you so much for being here.
President Kevin and fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce two guests. First is Chris Eischen. He is the Director of New Business Development for Tandem Tide. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay, great. And the other one is my daughter. This is my daughter, Mallory. She actually asked to come with me today, which was a wonderful thing. So she is about to start her senior year at Notre Dame Academy.
Awesome. Mallory, Chris, good to see you guys. I told Mallory after she was introduced she had to recite the four-way test, and she looked at me like I had 8 eyes, but we'll let you off the hook today. Next time.
Hello. Today I brought my niece Katie Teakin. She works for Lamar Advertising, so all the nice billboards you see around town, she helps produce them.
Awesome. Katie, thank you for being here.
Hello, Mr. Mullen and fellow Rotarians. I'm pleased to announce my guest today is Daryl Glaze. He is the president and founder of Culture DEI.
Daryl, welcome to Rotary.
President Mullen and Rotarians, I'm pleased to bring my guest here, Melinda Aldridge. She is a St. Ursula Academy alumna. She is also a survivor. She has her own entrepreneurship project going on for survivors of breast cancer.
Linda, thank you so much.
I'd like to introduce my good friend Eric Haig, guest today.
Eric, welcome to Rotary. Well, thank you to everybody for being here, to all of our guests. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? Anybody from any other clubs? All the way in the back? Hello. All right, you got to come introduce yourself. You can't just hide back there.
I am Heather Gallant with the 577 Foundation in Perrysburg, and I'm a member of the Perrysburg Rotary, and so I'm very happy to be here today saying hi to friendly faces and new friends. Thank you.
Heather, thank you for being here. All right, this time I'll invite Karen Stramel, the chair of the Peace Committee, to come to the podium for an update, I think, yes? All right, on the Peace Committee and the Neighbor to Neighbor project.
Is there a booster for us little people? I know it's hard to put it back up. I just wanted to quickly let everyone know about the Neighbor to Neighbor project. If you haven't read it in the spoke or know what it's about, it's an initiative we're we're supporting this year in this election year. It's a peace initiative. And we have our first event associated with it on August 25th at Glass City Metro Park. And I just wanted to encourage everybody to take a moment to look at the website. It's neighbortoneighbortoledo.com just to find out more information about it. But there's going to be, it's really just a neighborly kickoff to the entire program. There's definitely more events planned down the road, but this one's more of like, how can we be more neighborly and what can we do in the community to help everybody in a more peaceful way. So I just wanted to quickly just say, just an initiative that we are supporting and would love for you guys to come and support other neighbors in the community on the 25th. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And I know we've got a handful of Rotarians that are involved in that Neighbor to Neighbor project. Certainly it's a program that was supported through the last FAC with a grant, so Rotary is invested in that, and it's great to see everybody out there. All right, this time I'll direct your attention to the screens for a video recap of last Monday's Service Above Self Day. So thank you to all 51 Rotarians that were involved in our Service Above Self Day. Can we give them a round of applause? I'm so grateful for our committee chairs for their incredible support and leadership through this. Special shout out to Michelle Klinger, Allison Hammonds, and Adam Cassie for taking point on 3 of our 4 projects. I do have to apologize. There was some confusion with the project took place at the Target on Monroe Street. I will own that. We had a communication breakdown, and so we're going to work on that. The good news is our next project isn't until the end of October, so we've got a little bit more time to smooth out some of those issues. But hey, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. If I do that, I'm in the Baseball Hall of Fame. All right, we got some member anniversaries. It's the beginning of a new month. We'd like to recognize some milestone member anniversaries of those who joined in August. With 19 years as a member, Dan Murtaugh. 20-plus years, Tim Harrington and Joe Napoli. And 30-plus years, Father O, John Ehrman, and past President Brad Rabini. I saw Father O at the gas station this morning on his way out of town. So again, text him as well and let him know we celebrated him today. All right, let's get to, oh yeah, we can give him a round of applause. Thank you. Congratulations to Lance Woodworth on receiving a new certification from Destinations International. That's the highest educational achievement in the tourism industry. So congratulations, Lance. And congratulations to Rotarian Nina Corder, the founder of Women of Toledo. She's received the YWCA of Northwest Ohio's Women on the Rise Award, which will be given at this week's event on the 8th. So congratulations to Nina. All right, let's get to today's program. Fred Danhauser, will you please come to the podium and introduce today's guest speaker?
Well, first of all, I would like to say I've completed something on my bucket list. I never thought I'd be able to move from the children's table to the adult table, so this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Second of all, I am on the program committee, so I do get the opportunity to see the results, the evaluations, and I've been more than once seen, don't make a long introduction, so I won't. So all I will say is I had an opportunity to meet Nancy and learned about her and what she's doing. And it is the classic, you don't know what you don't know. And I don't know much, so I'm going to step down and introduce you to Nancy. And I'm highly confident that most, if not all of you, are going to learn some things you have never known before. So with that, Nancy Disbrow, come on up.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you all for coming out. So my presentation is Great Minds Don't Think Alike. And today I hope to give you a hopeful, positive, and firsthand perspective of differently wired brains and how they can positively affect your organization. So growing up, I was subject to a special kind of torture, one that started in the 2nd grade at the age of 7. Each week, my teacher would hand out a dreaded piece of paper, one that had 10 words on it, and no matter how hard I tried, no matter what I did, wrote them down 100 times, or tried to make a catchy jingle in my head, they just never stuck. My mother, who is nothing short of a saint, would spend every waking hour with me at the dinner table trying her best to do whatever she could do to help me memorize these words. Inevitably, at the end of each week, I would walk home feeling absolutely broken and defeated. How could I work so hard and only get maybe 5 or 6 of them right? I knew that I wasn't working. I was working twice as hard as everyone around me. And other kids were getting 10 out of 10s like it was no big deal. So how in the world could it be that I could work so hard and not get ahead? And honestly, nobody had any answers for me, which was tough. But it also got me to where I am today. So I am one of 40 million people that have dyslexia, and 2 million of those are diagnosed. Only 2 million out of our 40 million, just in the United States, are diagnosed. 8.7 million have ADHD, and I'm one of the 30% that have both. So I get an extra dose of fun, right? So today I want to talk you through what is neurodiversity, because I think we hear it, but we maybe don't know it, and maybe our brains go a little fuzzy. I wish it was like a more simple name, but it is what it is. What it looks like in your workplace, and then how can you as leaders and business owners really take advantage and capitalize on helping people with neurodiversity and help your business at the same time. So first, we'll talk just briefly about neurodiversity as a term. It's relatively new. It was coined in the late 1990s, so if you haven't heard of it, you're not alone. A lot of people haven't. It basically just describes a variety of differently wired brains. So in some ways, we all have differently wired brains. But there's some of us, about 20%, that have really differently wired brains. And so some of the conditions that fall in the neurodiversity category are dyslexia, autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, for all those people out there that say, I'm just bad with numbers. It might be a thing. Tourette's and tics also fall into that category, and so many more, but those are some of the most widely known. So what is dyslexia specifically? My slide's gonna work? There we go. So dyslexia is a language-based condition. So it's definitely, it's part of the brain. There are fMRI images. We can actually see it when we do scans of the brain. And it really has to do with reading, writing, and spelling as far as the language goes. It spans across the globe. It is not specific to the United States or any one particular language. It also has to do with information processing. So organization and sequencing and trying to get all the details in line is another challenge and strength of ours, and it has to do with dyslexia. So when you look at the brain, I always liked this picture because it really overlays a neurotypical brain and then a dyslexic brain. So the neurotypical brain, when reading, is in the gold, and then the blue is a dyslexic brain. So when we're reading and doing some of those information processing tasks, we're actually using the right side of our brain equally as much as the left, which is not typical, but it's really cool, and it gives us much different answers and perspectives when we're going through life and going through business as well. So what does dyslexia look like in the workplace? So 20% of people, or at least up to, we'll call it 15%, have dyslexia. So you certainly have it in your workplace, I would venture to guess. Sure, it's the inconsistent spelling, but it's some of the more, I would say, kind of sneaky things that you might not see and people may not know, right? Because if 40 million of us have it and only 2 million are diagnosed, there's a lot of people, maybe even in this room, that have it and don't know it. And to be honest, for so many years it wasn't diagnosed that we've grown up just thinking that maybe we just had to work twice as hard as everyone else, or we just had to focus more, or whatever it was. So confusing rights and lefts is something that most people don't necessarily correlate with dyslexia, but it's absolutely a thing. So when I'm driving with my family, I will point. I will not say right and left because it will most likely be the other one. Messy handwriting is one of my coping mechanisms, I like to call it, that basically if I do an I and an E and kind of scribble it all together, nobody really knows if I put the I first or the E first. So they just they guess that I did it right. So you may see some of these. The other one I want to call out here, and I've got handouts, so if you want to take any of this information home or back to the office, I have some information for you. But the gap in ability and confidence. So if you're sitting in a business meeting and you see someone who has really great ideas and they have a lot of solutions and you know that they're more than capable, but they don't have the confidence, that could be somebody who struggles with dyslexia. We've grown up in a very neurotypical world, and from a very young age, starting at 7 for me, I tried to fit in ways that made sense. But at the end of the day, I knew I didn't fit in, right? And so my confidence, I have to continue to work on that, and so many people do. So if you see that, it could be a sign, certainly not all the time, but it could be something. Confusing dates and times, transposing information, so flipping numbers around or dates around can certainly be a sign of dyslexia as well. So yes, there are challenges, but the good news is that these, on the opposite side, the challenges are pale in comparison to the strengths. So because of my dyslexic brain, I have an insatiable curiosity. I literally never stop wanting to learn more and talk to more people, and I love being in rooms like this because there's so much good stuff happening in business. And so you'll find somebody that's just always wanting to learn, always digging in, not in their lane. So I spent a career in HR, and I liked HR, but I was always curious about the business. I wanted to know what marketing was doing and what finance was doing, and how could we help the customer experience. It was all of it together, which makes sense. Endless creativity, very inventive. Dyslexics also have a really strong sense of visualization and 3D visualization. So a neurotypical person's brain will think more linearly, so like more in consecutive thoughts and processes, whereas the dyslexic brain, I like to call it like a helicopter view. So we look at it like the whole picture at once, which can be super helpful when you're looking at business and trying to figure out a strategic plan and how it all comes together. Now, I will say, with that strength, there are some downsides to that. The information sequencing and processing is a little bit tougher because I see the whole picture. I don't see, the street signs and the sidewalks when I'm looking down into that helicopter. So I see just the big picture really clearly. Engaging communicator, charismatic, a strong emotional intelligence and EQ is also a highly correlated trait to dyslexia. And certainly not every dyslexic has every trait, but on average, especially with like communication, dyslexics are about 80% above average when it comes to communication. So certainly a strength. And I'm sure it goes to the fact of us not liking to write things down and spell things correctly. We much rather say it, right? So entrepreneurial, pattern recognition, there are so many strengths that come with dyslexic brains. But remember, that's going to be the same person that potentially has a typo on their resume or doesn't spell an email exactly how you think that it should be typed out or spelled. You may also see a wonderful communicator in a meeting, and then you go back and they write an email and it's not nearly as vibrant as what it came out in the meeting. And that could be potentially dyslexia, right? Like it's harder for us to get it into words and writing than it is for us to communicate it. It's all up here. It's not an intellectual disability. It is just a different way of thinking that makes writing and reading challenging. Okay, so on to ADHD. For so many years, I've heard ADHD people can't focus, and there couldn't be anything further from the truth. People with ADHD can absolutely focus. We just can't always decide what we focus on, which is really, really frustrating. So we have an absolute ability to focus. If you see any 8-year-old with ADHD and they're playing video games, they can focus. They can focus for like 7 hours at a time, right? It's not that they can't focus. It's pulling them away and knowing what they need to do. So we know what we need to do. Getting our brains to do what we know we need to do is a huge challenge sometimes. The way I describe it when I'm working with clients, it's like there's a concrete wall between me and the task, and my brain can't get over the hurdle. I know what the hurdle is. I know that I've got to write a proposal or do whatever it is. Getting my brain to do that is so challenging. And I will tell you, I've been a vice president of HR, literally standing at my desk, just in tears, because I know what I need to do. It's not that I don't know, it's that I can't get my brain to do it. So it can be with or without hyperactivity. The older we get, the less obvious hyperactivity is, but you'll still see people fidgeting and doing those other things. And then I like to show this picture too. So this goes to the trying to focus point. So when you look at the frontal lobe of the brain on the left, you see a good amount of red. And that person is not trying to focus, but yet the heat map is lighting up, and there's certainly a lot of activity in that frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is kind of the CEO of the brain. So it tells the body and the brain what all to do. When the person's actually asked to focus, it actually decreases, which is exactly what it feels like. The more I try to focus, the less I can focus. And so it's frustrating because, again, it's not an intellect thing, it's not an IQ, it's just getting our brains to get over that hump. And I will say that medication does help in that regard. Okay, so what does ADHD look like in the workplace? Maybe. There we go. Trouble sitting still, frequent breaks, those are all things that you would normally see. But it's also trouble trying to plan and organize. Messy desks are certainly a part of it. A lot of ADHDers I work with have a pile system. It doesn't work, but we still do it. See, there's some others in here. Yeah, if you're chuckling, you know. So the pile system doesn't work. We continue to do it. It's okay. But you will see an unorganizational kind of trend throughout their lives. We also really like chaos. So we tend to create chaos whether we do it intentionally or unintentionally, but we usually do that. You'll see more in women than in men, but daydreaming and that quiet and attentive piece of ADHD come out. And this is why so many girls don't get diagnosed at a young age. It's getting better, but there's still a lot of women and girls that get missed because they're not the hyperactive piece of it. And honestly, they get diagnosed more with anxiety and depression when it's really ADHD that is undiagnosed. And so it's something that our medical community is a little bit more comfortable diagnosing than ADHD for a lot of doctors. So if you see somebody daydreaming in a meeting and they're a good employee, they have good ideas, let them go. Let them go. Let them daydream. I promise you when they come back into the room, they're going to have an awesome idea for whatever you're talking about, right? But let them go. Same thing with kids. If kids are staring out in the window, I think as a mother, I always want to know what they're thinking. So I'm like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? And that's the worst thing I can do. Right? Because they're in this amazing land. And if I'm breaking that, I'm breaking that creativity right there. So let them do that. So on the other side, the positives of ADHD far outweigh the negatives. You will see people jumping into action quicker than it just happens, right? Like if there's a car broke down inside the road or an accident, the first person that jumps out and helps that person in need probably has ADHD. It's just instinctual with us. We embrace change so quickly. I love having ADHD people on teams because they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. I'm like, we haven't even talked about it yet. Like, we don't even know what we're doing, but they're just excited. They're like, yes, sounds fun, let's do it. High energy, optimistic, they are going to be the cheerleaders. They're going to embrace whatever you throw at them. It's going to be a new challenge. And partly because they are so resilient, right? Again, they were brought up in neurotypical worlds, didn't really fit in, so they figured it out. They are really resourceful. When I would hire somebody and I could kind of guess that they might have ADHD, they are always the most resourceful. So they might not know the answer, but they will figure it out. And I don't know about you, but I would always take somebody like that on my team as somebody that can just go and get it done. Very intuitive, emotionally intelligent. Again, you'll see a lot of these that overlap, and that's because there is so much overlap between ADHD and dyslexia. And actually the same is true with autism and ADHD as well. So if a person has autism or dyslexia, there's a good chance, the chances are much higher that they'll also have ADHD. Okay, so what are you supposed to do? Oh, that one didn't come out right. Anyways, we're going to roll with this in a different way. 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic, and 25% of CEOs are dyslexic. What that visual was supposed to say was a ton of very successful people across the world are dyslexic, ADHD, or have autism. And actually 3 out of the 5 original sharks on Shark Tank are dyslexic. You will hear all 3 of them talk. I always joke that the only time you'll see Mr. Wonderful cry is when he talks about dyslexia and growing up as a kid. Okay, so what are we going to do to help our ADHD counterparts, leaders? A ton of leaders have ADHD, right? It makes sense because we can hop from task to task. We like a good challenge. We're going to sign up for it. Be respectful of disruptions. So for most people with ADHD, it takes us a while to actually get into a task. And so if somebody comes up to an office or a cubicle and says, hey, I was just thinking, that person may have just spent like 2 hours trying to get into that focus mode, and we just kicked them out of it like that. So what I recommend instead is create some focus times. Create maybe 2-hour blocks, maybe even just once a week, where everyone is comfortable and knows that they can really dig into a project. They don't have to check emails, they don't have to check Slack messages or instant message, whatever it is. They're allowed to just fully tunnel vision into what they're doing and really embrace it. And I promise that all your employees will thank you for that one as well. Also with ADHD, if we don't see it, it doesn't exist. So physical timers, wall calendars, whiteboards are all really, really helpful for us, especially if we can see our top priorities listed out. Those top 3 things, if they're in front of us and we can't miss them, will really help as well. To-do lists are good. Frequent check-ins are really, really important. So when we're working with ADHD clients, we have to have more frequent check-ins because our brains have that trouble processing and sequencing a lot of times. And so if we create more frequent check-ins, we can keep the projects on course and on track and still meet deadlines, which is good. But we can also see if somebody's struggling, and it creates a sense of urgency. We love urgency. So if you live with somebody who has ADHD and your house is really messy, just tell them that you have people coming over in 15 minutes and your house will be clean in no time, I promise. It's amazing how it works. So the other thing is exercise. So many of us do better when we're walking or pacing. So I always recommend, if you're one of those people that takes a phone call and you're always kind of pacing back and forth, just embrace that. Start doing walking meetings, whether you're on the phone or if you're out with a team member. Take a walk around the business park and start doing that. You'll come up with more creative solutions, I bet. So some technology that I always recommend, colored sounds. Everyone hears about white noise, but the most underrated colored sound, I think, is brown noise. So brown and pink have different frequencies and they just react to the brain differently, but in very positive ways. So my daughter loves to read with brown noise. It just puts her brain at ease and she's able to read and focus. Binaural beats is also a good thing to try if you think you might struggle with ADHD or even your kiddos. You do have to wear a headset, so headphones, because it's different frequencies in each ear, but it's just enough brain activation to try to get the hertz in each ear to kind of normalize in the middle, that it keeps our brains focused enough that we can actually focus on the task too, which is kind of interesting. Noise canceling headphones are always good. I always like to say we just want to create a bubble around people with ADHD. We want this focus bubble so that they don't get distracted from the outside world, if at all possible. And then Sansama is a task manager that I always recommend too. I always ask or get asked about task and tech and those type of things. So Sansama is a really good one if you're looking for something to kind of organize your day and your to-do list. Some watch outs, hyper focus. So as leaders, we love it when people get things done really well, really quick, and just super focus in on things. But ADHDers can take it too far. So it's an all or nothing thing. And so we will do that, whatever that project is, for 3 or 4 hours at a time sometimes, and neglect our own self-care. So we will forget to go to the bathroom, we'll forget to eat, forget to do water. I see some laughing in here, so I think I'm ringing true to a few. Not prioritizing self-care in general. So another thing that I see a lot is just people who are like, oh, I didn't get that project done this week, but I just won't take lunch next week, or I'll stay up really late and I'll make it all up. That's not healthy either, right? Because we need to prioritize our self-care to make sure that our brains are at that optimal level. And then overcommitting. So when you guys all go back to your offices and you're in your next meeting, watch for the person that's always like, yes, I will do that. That person may or may not have ADHD, but we're people pleasers. So we like to do things that help other people. And to be honest, it's fun and exciting to say yes to a project. It's less fun and exciting to actually do the project, right? So we will absolutely say yes to a project and then realize, oh my gosh, I can't do that, or I don't have enough time for that in my day, or I can't do it well, at least. So be that kind of gatekeeper for others on your team. That it's really, really helpful to say, like, are you sure you have that much time to do that other project? They'll thank you later, I promise. Okay, so leadership support for dyslexic individuals. I can't tell you how many gift cards I've bought for people that have proofread my work over the years from Starbucks. I mean, literally, I buy them like at bulk in Costco because that was the only way I could get through. Now there's some tech that you can get to help you out as well, but having somebody proofread an email is so helpful because it allows me or anyone else to really get our thoughts out there without having to worry about the details of all the grammar. I mean, commas are decoration for me. I have no idea where they go, literally. Thank goodness a lot of you in this room do. And I know who those people are on my team, and they do a great job of proofreading my work. Asking for volunteers on note-taking and taking meeting minutes. So dyslexics in general struggle with something called working memory. And the best way I can describe working memory is you're in a meeting, you're taking in information, you have questions, and you're trying to write things down. That takes up a lot of space, and not all of us can do that. So I can listen, but I can't also hold something in my brain until it's the appropriate time to get it out. And so we struggle with that. So just ask for volunteers. I'll never be the one to volunteer to be a note taker or to write something on a whiteboard. But I've been told to before, and I can tell you it's the greatest amount of panic I have in my business career is writing on a whiteboard in front of somebody. Meeting agendas are good, pre-reads are good, so if you can get that information out ahead of time, it's obviously a good thing to let people absorb information. Again, everybody likes that. Everyone would rather have a little bit of time ahead of the meeting to prepare. The verbal processing is something I usually see light bulbs go off. So in my brain, something isn't processed until I say it out loud, which is really awful for my family because it's a lot of talking. So it's like it's fuzzy until it actually comes out and I verbally talk through the idea or the thought or the visualization that I'm having. And then it all comes to life. So you may see people like that are just kind of talking through their day. They're talking to themselves, or they're, kind of talking through an idea and brainstorming out loud. Let them do that. Encourage them to do that. A lot of times if I don't have somebody, I'll literally go to a mirror or I'll go drive in my car and I'll just talk myself through the idea. And it's amazing how quickly it all comes to life from that. Some technology software, audiobooks. Obviously, I think everybody uses audiobooks now, but for me, that's almost the only type of book I use. I also encourage you, if you have children and they're struggling as readers, let them do audiobooks because it allows them to have the same intellect level and challenge without having to physically read the words, which they might not be capable of yet, but you don't want them to get behind on the actual knowledge side of things. Speech-to-text software is almost in every single computer now. It's just built into Google Chrome and all different software. So use it in your phone. Everything pretty much has that, but actually using it sometimes is different. I love voice notes too, so you can talk into your phone and actually do a voice note and send it to somebody instead, so much faster. Grammarly is a good text solution, so that will really help you if you struggle with spelling and grammar. You can pop an email in there, it'll redo it. Well, at least it redoes it for me. And I can type the different tone and if it's business or if it's informal, and it's a great lifesaver. And then Fathom Note Taker is another one that I always recommend. And that's more for Zoom meetings, but it's an AI note taker, and it does a phenomenal job, way better than I could do, honestly, taking notes. And it sends you a summary, it hyperlinks everything. It's literally somewhat life-changing. Okay, a few watch outs. Are we doing on time, Kevin? We're okay? Good? Okay. So I do like to, and I've kind of talked about the parents and ADHD and dyslexia, but my couple call outs just here, diet and exercise are so important for kids. So if you have kids or grandkids that may be struggling, diet and exercise really does help. Don't be scared of medication. Medication helps 80% of people with ADHD, and it gets a really bad rap, and it doesn't work for 20%, but for the 80%, it can be absolutely life-changing, and it doesn't have to be a lifelong thing. It can just get you over the hump. I like to say skills with pills. So we need life skills, but the pills do help to get us those life skills ingrained quicker. With dyslexic kids, the most important thing is to let them explore. Let them go do whatever they want to do. Go get muddy in the creek, go tear apart an engine, whatever it is, get them outside, let them draw, let them do photography, whatever it is, support it. Probably won't last very long anyways, right? They'll be off to something else in no time. But let them get out there and explore and use their brains because they have so much creativity and energy. And I think a lot of it's getting wasted right now. And so just really encourage that. And they're gonna break things. They might even break themselves, but that's okay. Most things are fixable, right? And then watch out for anxiety and depression. When we don't diagnose these conditions, so one question I almost always get from parents is, how do I tell my kid they have ADHD or dyslexia? And inevitably, I say, they already know. They just don't know what it's called, or they don't know what the name is, but they know they're different. If they're second grade or beyond, they already know, and probably their friends have already told them. Most of the time it's, well, my brother has ADHD and you look like that, so you must have it too. And so kids are smart, they already know. But watch out for anxiety and depression. So many times, if you're not fitting into that neurotypical box, you're going to feel like an outsider and that you're trying hard and it's not working and that you're less than. And so many times kids that are neurodivergent do get diagnosed with the anxiety and depression earlier than the actual learning condition itself. So that is my presentation. I'll leave you with this one quote from Albert Einstein. Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And I truly could have lived that life, but I had so many great role models to help me through. So thank you. Yeah.
All right, stay here for a second. So we're going to open up for questions at the floor mic. I do want to acknowledge your parents are here. So when you talk about those role models, so we'll give them a round of applause. They're in the back of the room. Thank you for being here. All right, we got about 10 minutes if you've got questions for Nancy.
For taking the time to come, talk with us. I got to sit with your parents, and I'm sure they were enjoying my reaction to your entire presentation, because you definitely just confirmed for me that I have ADHD. I feel like I've known this for a while, and some of my friends in the room were probably laughing at me going, yeah, that's Julia. As I was raised, and I think you were as well, in an era where diagnosis was sort of stigmatized, now, you know, as we are growing older and recognizing that this is something that we should give early attention to, what would be the best suggestion? Number one, maybe as an adult with undiagnosed ADHD, how do I, as an employer, as a leader, be better? And then also, how do I help the future generations of understanding it's okay to have that and maybe go get a diagnosis?
Yeah. So diagnoses are still tricky for a couple reasons. One, we don't have enough doctors to do it. Some of them still are going off the old diagnostic manuals that don't catch everything. So even if you do get to a doctor, which is a privilege for a lot of people, it's costly. It's still hard, and you still don't always get the answers right. And to be honest, this ADHD literally can just be a checklist, like literally a 2-page checklist that you go to your general practitioner and they say yes or no. Like, it is very unscientific for a diagnosis in many cases. So I don't put a lot in diagnosis. I put a lot in what can we actually do to emphasize these brains and make them come to life, right? And a lot of it is script rewrite. So we're telling, like, we're actually encouraging kiddos to, like, that's an awesome drawing, keep going. And less about grades and more about effort, right? So we want kids that work hard, and they're going to fail, but they have to get back up again, right? And they're not always going to win. Like, this is not about always, you know, getting like a generation of trophy kids, right? Like, they're going to fail, and that's okay. They're going to learn from it, but they need to understand their own gifts and strengths. So I think in business as well, calling out those things. I've been in meetings where people are like, wow, Nancy, how'd you come up with that? And those were moments when I hadn't figured out my brain yet that I knew, I'm like, maybe I do have a betterly wired brain than some people. So really calling those things out with kids and adults, I think is great.
Marvelous. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And welcome to the group, the ADHD club. Yes.
Nancy, thank you for a superb and enlightening presentation. I do have a question, though. Could you tell us a bit about your organization, which, not being dyslexic, I still can't quite read it. Is it Neurosity?
Neurosity.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
See, there you go. So could you tell us a bit about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So Neurosity, so neuro and then curiosity, because I have an overwhelming amount of curiosity, is an organization I started about 2 years ago. So I spent the first 20 years of my corporate world in HR leadership, and decided that there's just something out there that was bigger for me that I needed to do. And so, truthfully, I kind of took a little bit of time off, and then it hit me that I was an HR leader who has a dyslexic and ADHD brain, and I didn't know what I could do to support people like me in the organizations that I was serving. And I was in the highest leadership position itself. And so I created a company that truly helps HR leaders in general, CEOs, do better at facilitating ADHD and dyslexia within the workplace and really capitalizing on it. And it starts with education, and then it goes into really that support. And through that, I've learned that I really enjoy coaching as well. So I coach CEOs, professionals, professors, lawyers with ADHD and dyslexia as well. So thank you for asking.
My name is Eric Haig. I spent 20 years with Lamar Advertising, and I was their top producer. At age 56, I decided to develop a massive cocaine habit, and spent the last 5 months in a gritty, beautifully growthful rehab facility locally here. And my question was somewhat related, as addiction has all kinds of neurological issues. Any association with addiction, the brighter side of addiction, any knowledge you have of addiction as it relates to performance in the workplace after recovery?
So not exactly. I do, where my brain kind of went with that, Eric, and thank you, and congratulations for being on that journey. I think it's amazing. I will say that the prison and jail systems are full of dyslexic and ADHD people, because you either have you have two different routes, right? You have somebody who believed in you and knew that you were smart and you just didn't fit, and they got you through, and then a lot of people didn't. And so I will say that there's a heavy proportion. I've heard of above 50% of our jail systems have dyslexic people in them, and I know it's like 90% of suicide notes have dyslexic errors in them, and so. Yeah. I can't speak to the addiction part as much, but I would assume that would kind of play into it to some extent. But yeah, thank you for sharing your story too.
I appreciate you constantly bringing up your HR experience. I am someone that was in my very early 20s put into disciplinary action for working in a medical records department before it was electronic and constantly transposing numbers. And I did have a coworker that was an angel and knew to go to the 9s and when she was looking for a 6, or I knew, right? We knew what my numbers were that I mixed up, but I was put into disciplinary action. And years later, I have coworkers and colleagues that I have seen really struggle to manage and maintain a team because, and these are coworkers that are up front with an ADHD diagnosis, because I find that they're constantly operating in that space of hyper focus and overcommitment, but instead of that being something that they place on themselves, they place it on their team. Can you give any advice on how to, it's a very touchy subject and not necessarily appropriate for me as a colleague to bring up, but I want to, and I don't know how to go about having that conversation without being offensive or inappropriate. But I worry about this individual's ability to maintain their team and stop having, recidivism when I know that it's really that management style that needs to be.
Yeah. So this is kind of the same thing that I tell employees too, because I don't think that we're in a workplace environment, for a general statement here, that is really inclusive of ADHD and dyslexia diagnosis and going to HR. Because I was the HR leader that didn't know how to help, right? So I think that's where most HR leaders are right now. What I always recommend is that we start with the positives. Hey, I love your curiosity and your creativity is literally endless, but here's what I'm seeing. And I wonder if I could help you manage some of these things. And usually if you're self-aware and the other part is usually ADHD people have ADHD kids too. So sometimes pulling in the hey, your son has ADHD and I know it's really genetic. So maybe in a conversation, depending on how well you know them. But in general, hey, I'm really good at processes and designing plans. Could I help you with that? Because I think we could make the team a lot stronger if I could help support you in that way and try to go through it that way. It's always a positive spin on things. Invariably, they know their weaknesses. I think most people do. It's just a matter of they probably don't understand how much of a burden they're putting on their team too.
Nancy, very good presentation, and thanks for the work that you're doing. 2 questions. One of them I think is super short. What is brown noise? And I don't know what pink noise is either. The second question I think relates more to ADHD than dyslexia, but I won't pretend to be anything close to an expert on either one. They seem to be more prevalent now than they were 20, 25 years ago. Are there things that are more prevalent now in society, maybe including what called screens, which anything from a cell phone to a television, but cell phones and computers may be big ones.
Yeah, no, great questions. So brown noise, just very quickly, is white noise is a frequency and brown noise is a frequency. For anybody who's old enough to remember, like when TVs go off air at the end of the night and there's like the rainbow things and the static, that's kind of brown noise. It's a deeper static. Pink noise is a higher pitched, but so there are different pitches and different frequencies for the noise. And it's really just an individual thing. And then your second question, the screen time, and yes, thanks. Sorry, that working memory gets me every time. So the way our brains are wired are the way our brains are wired. So detection and screening and a better analysis of what it actually looks like in men and women being very different has certainly played a role in it. So that's part of the increase that we're seeing. I do think that our diet is different than it was 40 years ago too. There's a lot of artificial flavors and additives and colors that have been shown to make ADHD worse. So I don't think that it causes it. I just want to be very clear. I don't think that necessarily causes it, but I think it can exacerbate the level of it, and it can make it more pronounced. And I do think, I mean, screen time, while I think it's, there can be a healthy balance, kids need to get out more. They need to get that energy out, and they need to exercise that creativity too. So there's definitely social and environmental factors as well. But I do think fundamentally, my brain is dyslexic, my daughter's brain is dyslexic, my father's brain is dyslexic. Hopefully he doesn't mind me sharing that. I guess I'll hear about it on the ride home if so. But it's genetic, and same with ADHD. Yes.
Nancy, thank you for bringing this topic up. I went to a conference recently, and the subject, although yours is somewhat narrow in the two, the spectrum of neurodiversity is so vast, from what we might call a quirk to all the way to behavioral examples that we can see daily. But I think my question is more about the managerial openness that we as leaders and managers have to try to dig deeper into the person to get them to do their best work. Could you comment on that a little bit?
Sure. I absolutely, I see this daily. The awareness is good on a whole level, but where I really make the biggest impact is with leaders, because so many people that we're leading don't know that they're neurodivergent, right? They're just quirky, or they're just goofy, or they have a lot of energy, but they're not necessarily, and they don't know that they're neurodivergent in any way. And maybe they're not. Maybe they just have a lot of energy, right? But really focusing on that and helping them identify it and then supporting them is really, really powerful, and letting them know that it's okay, right? Like, yes, you have a lot of energy, and that's okay. We're here to support you. The education, though, is so big, because most people don't, even with ADHD, they don't know how to help themselves. They don't know the vocabulary yet. And so that's where I can kind of come in and help kind of support that. But having the conversation and just saying, hey, I back to the positives. I see all of this great creativity. How can I help you get that into productivity, which is hard for us ADHDers sometimes. Last one.
I'm going to cut you off. I apologize. We hit 1:02. If you've got a minute to stick around, I know there's probably a few more questions. Maybe some folks that want to talk to you about how they all just diagnosed me with ADHD throughout that presentation. So thank you for that. We got some great programs coming up in the next 3 weeks. We want you guys to be aware of. Next week, August 12th, John Jones will lead a fireside chat with Pete Cadence. Pete is the founder of Hope Chicago and Hope Toledo, also the man behind the Scott Promise, where the seniors at Scott High School receive their college tuition along with their parents, paid for 2 years. On August 19th, we'll have the presidents of UT, BGSU, and Owens will speak at a panel regarding to the state of public higher education. And on August 26th, Bill Bissett, a fellow Rotarian and the president of Lourdes University, will join Jim Pollack, the CEO of Junior Achievement, to discuss their new fifth-year collaboration and innovations in education. Nancy, thank you for your presentation. Fred, thank you for bringing her to Rotary. We have a gift for you. We have a book that has been authored by a past president of our club. I don't believe it exists in audiobook, so you're not going to read it anyway, but we will still give it to you. Fred can read it to you. It'll be just fine. We're also going to make a donation in your name to Polio Plus, which is an initiative that's important to us here at the Toledo Rotary, but also at Rotary International to help eradicate polio from our world. So thank you very much for being here. We have one committee meeting this afternoon. The Environmental Committee will meet here in the ballroom, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Go out and make it a great day.